Busy making budget plans for the business year ahead? We've got you covered. Switch to 3 Business and choose from the latest handsets with unlimited data in our winter sale. Woo-hoo! Plus, our business price promise means if you find a cheaper deal from one of our biggest competitors, we guarantee to beat it. Search 3 Business or visit us in-store.
Business price promise means we'll beat a direct quote you've been given by EE, Vodafone or O2 for business plans by at least £1 per month. Terms apply. Search 3 Business price promise.
Hello and welcome to Audiobook Connection, behind the scenes with the creative teams. I'm Becky Parker Geist and I'm your host. Audiobook Connection is your place to learn about the audiobook creative process and for authors to learn valuable tips on producing and marketing your audiobooks. This podcast is sponsored by Pro Audio Voices, helping great stories come alive through audiobook production and marketing. Hi, thanks for being with me. I wanted to continue the conversation about audiobooks for kids from our last episode because partly I think audiobooks for kids are really important and have a tremendous amount of value that many people aren't necessarily thinking about. So I want to highlight some of those in this episode. If you have children in your life and they are not yet listening to audiobooks, then I think this might be really, really helpful. And if you're the author of children's books, likewise, this can help not only in your own thinking about ways to get your content out there, but also these could be valuable ways for you to point out why your audiobook for kids is really helpful to your particular target market audience. With children's books, of course, we're talking about the adults who are making those purchases, and that is most often going to be parents, grandparents, and others like aunts and uncles and neighbors who want to give gifts to children. So again, we're going to focus on what are some of the benefits and values of having kids listen to audiobooks, why we want those adults to consider getting audiobooks for the kids, and why authors should seriously consider getting their children's books into audio. Let's get started. We have 2 basic categories to consider in this discussion. The first is children's books that have already been published or already have illustrations. Most often, these are already going to be published. The second is books that do not yet have illustrations or have not been published, in which case we're talking about an audio first or an audio only scenario. We're actually going to start with the second of those, with books that have not yet been published. As we know, having illustrations created for a children's book can be very costly. Illustration is a very time-intensive creation process, just as audio is, but I would venture to say that as a general rule, illustration would take even longer than the audio creation process. Because of that, most often, audio is likely to be less expensive than having illustrations created. If you are an author that has a story and you've not gone through that expense of having illustrations, then this might be a really good fit for you. You will still need a cover design. That's always going to be the case. But having that one design created is far less than having the entire book illustrated. So now let's just talk about some of the benefits and values that having an audiobook will provide. First of all, for the child, it's going to be stimulating their imagination in a different kind of way. So using different senses. They're not using their visual sense. Instead, they're using their auditory. Anytime we provide content with a different set of stimuli, that's going to be beneficial because it gives the child a different kind of opportunity to use their senses and their mind to engage in the content. Another benefit is the fact that there is not a screen to be watching. especially since the pandemic hit with the schools shutting down, at least in physical contact. There's been an increased amount of screen time for kids. And that is not a reflection in any negative way on the adults in the lives of those kids. Adults, educators who are trying to provide educational content have been limited in the way that they can do that. And by using the, Zoom and other online screen options, it certainly allowed certain things to go forward that had been kind of just dumped in the laps of the parents for the short term. All that's fine, but it's really helpful for kids to be able to have some time that is not engaged with screens. In fact, the majority of their life should not be engaged with screens. And that's my opinion. There may be others who disagree with that, but both from the perspective of the health of the eyes, as well as from the overall general well-being, and also the benefits of having kids being really physical, that's what I'm speaking from. With an audiobook, kids can be active in the moment and still be listening to the audiobook. Or, and this is another value, it could be a time when we're asking them to be on the quieter side. That might be like going to bed at night. For some children, settling in can be challenging, and having an audiobook to listen to can allow their minds to relax and listen while their bodies settle into sleep. You can have the lights out and let the story lull them to sleep. And there are a couple other benefits I want to talk about. One is the expansion of a child's horizons in terms of the voices that they're hearing and the sounds that they're hearing. Audiobooks read by different narrators, read with different accents, told in different kinds of story tones. All of these can help expand a child's world. Likewise, if an audiobook includes sounds that are unfamiliar to a child, let's say, for example, it's a young child and they have not had any exposure to a certain kind of animal, and that animal is in the story, and we hear the sound of that animal. Here we're getting this expansion, this exposure to some new sounds and new worlds that are related to those sounds. Likewise, it could even be atmospheric. Let's say, for example, a child lives in a desert kind of area, and they're not used to hearing what a rainforest sounds like. And those sounds obviously are very distinctly different. By creating the children's audiobook with a really dense, rich soundscape, we are creating that kind of exposure for the kids who are listening. And if we include children's books that are read by narrators with different accents, this is a great way to expand kids' horizons regarding how people sound. Not everyone sounds like mom or dad or the other adults in their lives. And when we bring into the mix audiobooks that are about or include or have within their context other cultures, and we can include the sounds of those cultures, this again will help expand the horizons of the kids. Let's take a short pause, and when we come back, I'm going to talk about books that have already been published and have illustrations, and what are some additional opportunities that you might not have thought about, and we'll get into that when we get back.
Looking for a way to bring your children's book to life in an engaging way for young ones? At Pro Audio Voices, we bring together decades of experience with audio production, teaching, and parenting to craft a listening experience that will delight children and parents alike. If you're looking for an experienced team to bring your children's book to life in audio, check out proaudiovoices.com.
Okay. When we're talking about books that have already been published, they already have their illustrations, then there are a few additional benefits we can talk about. The first of those is fluency. Children's reading fluency is greatly benefited by children hearing adults reading stories. Now, the truth is that not all parents feel comfortable reading aloud to their kids. For those of you that really is a comfortable thing, that might seem strange to you. But there are parents who do not have good reading fluency themselves. It might be because in their own childhood, that wasn't something that they achieved, and it's been an uncomfortable thing for them. It could be that the book is in, say, English, and English is not their first language, and so they feel uncomfortable being able to read it properly or well. And even if they do feel comfortable, there may be ways in which listening to a native English speaker read the book that could be beneficial to the kids. So reading fluency is one of the benefits of having audiobooks. And I will say also, I've included it in this section because the kids can read along or listen along if they have both the text in front of them as well as the audio to play while they're reading. Similar to that, in terms of a child's read aloud fluency, is also their reading silent fluency. Being able to hear how a sentence is phrased is really valuable for kids. And then one more thing I want to point out, and that is the potential, the opportunity that once you have your book recorded in audio and you have it in text with the illustrations, it's only like one more step before you turn that, if you want, into a video. How you use that video could be any number of different ways, whether you want to make it available as a paid-for product, or whether you want to use part of it as a teaser to get your book, or in some other marketing ways. All of that is available to you and pretty easy to put together once you have both the audio and the visual. So I'm going to call that a wrap for today. I want to thank you so much for being with me. We are looking for collaborative children's book projects to put together and would be very interested if you are a children's author and have content and you'd like to consider being a part of a collaborative children's book project. Please reach out to us at proaudiovoices.com. You can schedule a discovery call and let us know that you've heard this podcast or our previous episode and that you might be interested in participating in a project like that. Thanks again. Have an awesome day. Thanks for joining us for Audiobook Connection, behind the scenes with the creative teams. Please take a moment to subscribe at audiobookconnection.com. The podcast is sponsored by Pro Audio Voices, helping great stories come alive through audiobook production and marketing. Learn more at proaudiovoices.com. Again, thanks for being with us, and please join us next week.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.